Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back thousands of years into a world of marble temples, echoing oracles, and stories that once shaped the way an entire civilization understood the universe. We're exploring the world of ancient Greece and uncovering the long, fascinating history of how and why they worshipped their powerful gods Zeus, Poseidon, Ares, Athena, and so many others who once ruled over their imagination and faith. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy the type of content that merges myth and mystery. And hey, let us know from where you're watching and what time it is for you right now. It's time now to dim the lights and let's cover what we have for tonight. Together, before the marble temples, before the poets sang of heroes and gods, there was silence, the kind of silence that stretches across mountains and seas. In that silence, the earliest people of the Greek world looked up at the stars and wondered who or what might be looking back. Long before the myths we know today, before Zeus ruled from Olympus and Poseidon stirred the seas, there existed something simpler, something deeply human, the desire to explain the world. The first Greeks, living in the rugged landscapes of the Aegean, were surrounded by forces beyond their control. The land was rocky and unpredictable. The seas could be calm one day and deadly the next. Lightning flashed across the sky. The ground sometimes trembled, and the sun seemed to rise and fall as if guided by invisible hands. To these early people, such powers were alive. The wind that whispered through the olive trees might be a spirit. The river that flooded could be angry. The mountain that touched the clouds could be the home of something divine. This early worldview wasn't organized religion as we know it, but animism, the belief that all things, from rocks to rivers, carried a spark of life. Over generations, these ideas evolved, merging with stories passed through families, tribes, and travelers. Slowly, these spirits took form. They gained names, personalities, and purposes. Some were generous, others vengeful. Each had a story, and those stories began to form the foundation of what would become Greek mythology. The dawn of Greek belief was deeply tied to the land itself. The Greeks lived among towering mountains, isolated valleys, and hundreds of islands scattered across the sea. Geography shaped their religion because each city-state was separated by natural barriers. Local communities developed their own patron gods and goddesses. In one place, a mountain might be sacred to a sky god. In another, a spring might belong to a water spirit. Over time, as trade and communication grew, these local beliefs began to merge, giving rise to a unified pantheon that the entire Greek world could recognize. But the path from nameless nature spirits to the Olympian gods was long and complex. Before Zeus, Hera, and Athena, there were older divine beings, the Titans and the primordial deities. The Greeks imagined the universe as a great unfolding of generations. In the beginning was chaos, the vast emptiness. From chaos came Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Their union produced the first divine family, the Titans. These early gods weren't abstract ideas. They represented the physical world itself: mountains, rivers, day, night, love, and memory. Every aspect of existence had its divine source. When the Greeks later developed philosophy, they would say that understanding the gods was a way of understanding nature. The myths weren't just entertainment, they were explanations, poetic, symbolic attempts to make sense of a mysterious world. The Minoan civilization, flourishing on the island of Crete around 2000 BCE, gave some of the earliest hints of structured Greek religion. Archaeologists discovered frescoes, altars, and sacred symbols, most famously the double-headed axe and the bull, both central to their worship. The Minoans seemed to revere a great goddess, a figure of fertility and nature, often depicted with snakes in her hands, symbols of rebirth. Their religion was matriarchal in tone, centered on the cycles of life, death, and renewal. Meanwhile, on the mainland, the Mycenaeans built their citadels and carried their own warrior gods. They inherited and reshaped the Minoan beliefs, adding their own elements of power, conquest, and hierarchy. Their chief god, called Zeus Pater, meaning Father Zeus, appears in tablets written in the earliest form of Greek script, Linear B. It's from this time that we begin to see familiar divine names appear in history, proof that the Olympian pantheon was already forming thousands of years before the classical age. As these early civilizations rose and fell, the myths changed with them. When the Mycenaeans collapsed around 1200 BCE, Greece entered a dark age, a period of cultural silence lasting centuries. Yet even in that darkness, the stories survived, passed orally from generation to generation. They grew richer with time, merging the memories of ancient tribes with the imagination of poets. When the Greeks emerged again into the light of history, their myths were ready, fully formed, vibrant, and filled with life. But to truly understand why the Greeks worshipped their gods so fervently, we have to see how they viewed the relationship between mortals and the divine. To them, the gods were not distant creators or moral judges. They were powerful beings who shared the same passions, emotions, and flaws as humans. The Greeks didn't worship perfection, they worshipped reflection. The gods argued, loved, envied, and schemed. They were, in many ways, mirrors of humanity itself, elevated to immortal scale. This idea shaped how Greeks interacted with their gods. They didn't just pray for forgiveness, they negotiated. They offered sacrifices to earn favor, built temples to honor power, and performed rituals to restore balance. It was a relationship of give and take. Humans respected the gods, and in return, hoped to receive protection, guidance, or success. The world of the divine was not separate from daily life. It was daily life. Farmers prayed to Demeter for crops, sailors to Poseidon for calm seas, and soldiers to Ares for strength. Even the smallest action, lighting a fire, crossing a river, beginning a meal, might involve a brief acknowledgement of divine presence. The early Greeks believed that neglecting the gods invited disaster. They called this hubris, the sin of pride, forgetting one's place beneath the divine. In myths, hubris is always punished. Kings who challenged the gods were struck down. Heroes who boasted too loudly met tragic ends. These stories served as reminders. Respect the divine order, and you will thrive. Defy it, and you will fall. It's important to understand that for the Greeks, myth and religion were inseparable from identity. Their myths explained not just the creation of the world, but also the origins of their cities, their families, their values. A child in ancient Greece would grow up hearing tales of Zeus's thunder, Athena's wisdom, and the labors of Heracles. These were not mere legends. They were the cultural DNA of Greece, the shared language of belief that united a people scattered across islands and mountains. By the time we reach the dawn of classical Greece, the foundation of their religion is firmly in place. The Greeks had shaped a cosmos populated by divine beings, each with their own domain and purpose. The world was alive, ordered, and full of meaning. To them, every mountain could be sacred, every river divine. Life itself was a dialogue with the gods, a conversation carried through prayer, offering, and story. So, when we speak of the dawn of Greek belief, we are speaking of more than temples and rituals. We are speaking of humanity's oldest instinct to look at the chaos of existence and imagine that behind it all there is something or someone listening. The Greeks turned that instinct into poetry, into art, into philosophy. They didn't just believe in gods, they built a world where the divine and the human coexisted in constant motion, a world that would go on to shape Western thought for millennia. Before the familiar myths of Zeus and Hera echoed across ancient Greece, there were two great civilizations whose beliefs laid the foundation for everything that followed: the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. These were the cultures that shaped the earliest form of Greek religion, blending nature worship, ritual, and storytelling into a legacy that would later evolve into the Olympian pantheon. To understand how the Greeks came to imagine gods with human forms and divine powers, we must begin in the Aegean Bronze Age, more than 3,500 years ago. The sun rises over the glittering waters of the Mediterranean, and in its light stands the island of Crete, the heart of Minoan civilization. The Minoans flourished from around 2000 to 1450 BCE, a society advanced, artistic, and deeply religious. Their cities were unlike anything else in Europe at the time. The palace at Knossos, with its labyrinthine corridors, colorful frescoes, and intricate plumbing systems, stood as a symbol of sophistication. But beneath this beauty lay a profound reverence for the forces of nature. The Minoans saw the divine in every living thing, in the bull that symbolized strength, in the snake that represented renewal, in the earth that nurtured crops and sustained life. Unlike later Greek religions that were dominated by male gods, Minoan belief seemed to center around female divinities, particularly a great mother goddess, sometimes called Potnia, the mistress. She was often depicted standing confidently, flanked by animals, or holding serpents in each hand. This goddess likely represented fertility, the harvest, and the life-giving power of the earth itself. Shrines dedicated to her have been found in caves, hilltops, and within palace complexes, each a sacred connection between humanity and the natural world. The Minoans practiced rituals that involved dance, feasting, and possibly bull-leaping ceremonies, where acrobats vaulted over charging bulls in acts that may have symbolized communion with divine power or the taming of nature's ferocity. The bull, a recurring symbol in Minoan art, would later find its way into Greek myth, most famously in the story of the Minotaur, the half-man, half-bull creature that lived in the labyrinth of King Minos. Whether or not this myth had real historical roots, it shows how Minoan beliefs echoed through Greek imagination. Long after their civilization faded, religion for the Minoans wasn't something that separated the divine from the human. It was integrated into every part of life. Archaeologists have found small altars in homes, sacred symbols carved into pottery, and votive offerings left in caves, signs that worship was both public and private, both grand and intimate. For them, the gods were not distant figures, but companions in the daily rhythm of existence. While the Minoans thrived in the Aegean islands, on the Greek mainland, another culture was rising, the Mycenaeans. Where the Minoans were peaceful traders, the Mycenaeans were warriors. Their citadels crowned rocky hills, Mycenae, Tyrans, Pylos, fortified with massive stone walls, so large that later Greeks would say they had been built by giants, the Cyclopes. The Mycenaeans absorbed much from the Minoans, their art, their writing, and even their gods. Yet they infused these ideas with their own martial character. Their religion became one of hierarchy and power, a reflection of their society, while the Minoan goddess embodied fertility and renewal. The Mycenaeans elevated male deities associated with kingship, thunder, and war. Among these, one name stands out clearly from their surviving tablets: Zeus. The discovery of clay tablets written in Linear B, an early form of Greek script, gave historians a rare glimpse into Mycenaean life. On these tablets, dating back to around 1300 BCE, appear the names of several gods who would later dominate Greek mythology: Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Artemis, Dionysus. This is the first solid evidence that these deities existed long before Homer ever sang of them. It's as if the Mycenaeans were already writing the prologue to the myths we know today. The Mycenaeans saw their gods as rulers, much like their kings. The divine world mirrored their own society, hierarchical, ordered, and centered on authority. At the top stood Zeus, the Sky Father. Poseidon, interestingly, seems to have held a particularly important role. Some scholars even believe he may have been considered chief of the gods before Zeus took that title in later Greek religion. This could reflect the Mycenaeans' dependence on the sea, both for trade and conquest. Rituals in Mycenaean culture were solemn affairs. Archaeological evidence suggests that animal sacrifices, especially bulls and sheep, were common offerings to appease the gods. They also built megarons, large throne rooms that may have doubled as religious spaces. Fires burned on central hearths, where libations of oil and wine were poured, connecting mortals to the divine through flame and smoke. While the Minoans celebrated nature's abundance, the Mycenaeans seemed more concerned with power and survival. Their world was one of ambition and danger, of kings and warriors seeking favor from gods who could decide the outcome of battles or the success of harvests. This difference between the two civilizations, the Minoan harmony with nature and the Mycenaean hunger for dominance, would eventually fuse into the dual character of Greek religion, the balance between nurture and power, between goddess and god, between earth and sky. Around 1200 BCE, disaster struck. Across the Mediterranean, empires crumbled in what historians call the Late Bronze Age collapse. The Mycenaean palaces burned, Trade routes vanished, cities fell silent. For centuries, Greece entered a dark age, its writing systems forgotten, its grand palaces abandoned. But not everything was lost. The stories, the rituals, the belief in divine order, those endured. In the absence of kings, the myths lived on in the minds of the people. As centuries passed, the memories of these ancient civilizations transformed into legend. The once great palaces of Mycenae and Knossos became the setting of epic tales of heroes, monsters, and gods. The Mycenaeans were remembered through the myths of Agamemnon, Helen, and the Trojan War, while echoes of Minoan rituals appeared in the worship of gods like Poseidon and Ariadne. The Greeks would look upon the ruins of these old worlds and see not the fall of nations, but the footprints of their divine ancestors. By the time the classical Greek era emerged centuries later, these two ancient cultures, the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, had become the bedrock of Greek religious imagination. The Minoan reverence for nature and the feminine divine merged with the Mycenaean ideals of hierarchy and masculine power, forming the dual structure of the Greek pantheon, gods and goddesses, each representing both the chaos and the order of life. It's a fascinating irony that the Greeks, so renowned for philosophy and reason, inherited their deepest spiritual roots from civilizations that vanished long before their philosophers were born. Yet through ruins, artifacts, and echoes of myth, we see the clear lineage from the mother goddess of Crete to the thunder god of Olympus, from the bull vaulting ceremonies to the mighty chariot of Zeus. The Minoans taught reverence for the living world. The Mycenaeans taught respect for power and fate. Together, they created the spiritual DNA of Greece, a legacy that would carry forward into the great myths, temples, and rituals of the classical age. So when we imagine the Greeks kneeling before their gods, offering olive oil to the flames, we are witnessing not a single invention, but the culmination of thousands of years of belief, a long evolution that began in the caves of Crete, in the citadels of Mycenae, and in the hearts of people who saw divinity not as distant, but ever present in the world around them. If we could travel back in time to ancient Greece, before the written word preserved its myths, we would find a culture alive with stories. Stories that weren't confined to scrolls or inscriptions, but breathed into existence by voice and memory, long before Homer's verses were ever written down. Before libraries and parchment, the Greeks carried their religion, their history, and their identity in the spoken word. This was the age of oral tradition, a period when myth was not something to be read, but something to be heard, shared in the flickering glow of firelight on quiet evenings by the sea, or in the crowded courtyards of villages where storytellers drew people together. In these moments, the gods came to life. They thundered, they laughed, they fell in love, and they fought. In the centuries following the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization, around 1200 BCE, Greece fell into what historians call the Dark Age, a time with little writing, no great cities, and few monuments. But it was during this darkness that the light of storytelling burned brightest. Without written records, the people turned to memory and performance to preserve what was most important: their beliefs, their heritage, and their connection to the divine. In every community, there were ahoidoi, singers or bards, who memorized vast epics and myths, performing them with rhythm and melody. These poets were not entertainers alone, they were keepers of sacred truth. They shaped how the Greeks understood their gods and themselves. Their songs were not mere art, they were acts of remembrance, carrying the voices of ancestors across generations. Through these oral traditions, the scattered fragments of Minoan and Mycenaean belief transformed into living mythology. The gods who had once represented nature and power became characters, dynamic, emotional, and deeply human. Zeus became not just the sky, but the ruler who governed it. Poseidon wasn't just the sea, he was the god who could choose to calm or destroy it. Athena became the voice of wisdom, Ares the embodiment of rage. These deities evolved through centuries of repetition, their personalities molded by countless storytellers who added, changed, or reimagined details to fit their audiences. But how did such stories survive with no written form? The answer lies in the power of repetition and structure. Greek oral poetry relied on formulaic expressions, repeated phrases, rhythmic patterns, and epithets like rosy-fingered dawn or swift-footed Achilles. These weren't artistic embellishments, they were mnemonic tools. They allowed the storyteller to recall enormous passages while maintaining rhythm and emotion. This poetic structure became the DNA of Greek myth, ensuring it could be performed, remembered, and passed on unchanged, or at least recognizable, over centuries. Out of this tradition eventually came two names that would define Western storytelling, Homer and Hesiod. But before we reach them, we must imagine the countless unknown poets whose voices filled the air long before writing began. These anonymous narrators gave shape to the mythic landscape of Greece. In their songs, mountains became homes for gods, storms became divine tempests, and heroes were born to bridge the world of mortals and immortals. It was through oral tradition that the Greeks came to see the gods not as abstract forces, but as participants in the grand human story. The divine was personal. The myths carried lessons about courage, fate, and respect for cosmic order. For example, tales of hubris, where mortals defied the gods and suffered tragic consequences, served as moral anchors for the society that told them. These were not just cautionary tales, but reflections of a worldview in which humans had to find balance within the will of the gods. The oral tradition also served a social purpose. In small communities scattered across the Greek world, these stories united people. They reminded them of shared ancestry, of a common origin in mythic ages of heroes and gods. Whether you lived in a fishing village on an island or a shepherd's hut in the mountains, the same names, Zeus, Athena, Apollo, echoed through the tales told by your elders. This continuity gave the Greeks a collective identity that would later form the backbone of their civilization. The stories evolved with every retelling. As centuries passed, regional variations appeared. In some places, Zeus was the benevolent sky father. In others, he was a stern enforcer of justice. Poseidon could be worshipped as a creator of horses in one region and a bringer of earthquakes in another. Local myths reflected the geography and needs of each community. A coastal town might honor the sea gods more fervently, while a mountain village would dedicate its worship to deities of the land and harvest. Yet the beauty of the Greek oral tradition was that it allowed all these variations to coexist, forming a rich and interconnected mythic tapestry. When literacy returned to Greece around the 8th century BCE, the oral tradition did not vanish, it transformed. Poets began to write down what had long been sung. Among the first and most important was Homer, whose epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, became the heart of Greek culture. Though these works focused on heroic tales rather than religious doctrine, they preserved and immortalized the relationship between gods and mortals. Homer's gods were powerful, capricious, and deeply involved in human affairs. They quarreled, took sides in battles, and shaped the destinies of men. His poetry captured the spirit of the oral age, its rhythm, its repetition, and its reverence for divine order. Alongside Homer, Hesiod, a poet of the same era, gave structure to the divine family itself. In his theogony, he told the genealogy of the gods, how the world began with chaos, and how each generation of deities emerged in succession: Gaia and Uranus, the Titans, and finally the Olympians led by Zeus. This was more than poetry, it was theology. Hesiod turned the oral fragments of countless generations into a coherent narrative that explained the creation and hierarchy of the universe. His work bridged the gap between myth and religion, giving the Greeks a structured vision of the cosmos that endured for centuries. Through these poets, the oral tradition became the foundation of Greek education, philosophy, and spirituality. Every child learned about the deeds of heroes, the wrath of gods, and the importance of balance and humility. These stories weren't simply entertainment, they were instruction, shaping the moral and emotional fabric of Greek society. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the oral tradition was its flexibility. Unlike written scripture, it wasn't fixed. It breathed and adapted. Each performer brought something of themselves to the tale: a new emphasis, a regional variation, a different moral focus. This made Greek mythology not a single static belief system, but a living organism, one that could grow with the people, reflecting their fears, their hopes, and their evolving understanding of the world. The Greeks didn't need temples to preserve their faith. They had their voices. In every sung verse and spoken legend, the gods remained alive. The oral tradition ensured that even in the absence of writing, Greece never lost its connection to the divine. By the time these stories were finally inscribed in ink and stone, they had already achieved immortality, not because they were written, but because they had been spoken for so long that they became part of the Greek soul itself. The oral tradition was the heartbeat of Greek belief, a rhythm that carried gods and heroes from the dawn of prehistory into the brilliance of classical civilization. And as we listen to the echoes of those ancient voices, we can almost imagine the flicker of the firelight, the distant crash of the sea, and the storyteller's calm voice beginning again. In the beginning, there was chaos. When one thinks of ancient Greece, one name rises above all others, like thunder over the mountains: Zeus. His name alone evokes power, justice, and the roaring sky. To the Greeks, he was not merely a god, he was the god, the ruler of Olympus, the guardian of order, and the father of gods and men. But who was Zeus truly? How did he become the supreme figure in Greek mythology? And what did he represent to those who knelt before his altars? To begin understanding Zeus, we must first remember where he came from. Born in secret on the island of Crete, he was the child who escaped his father's hunger, the one destined to overthrow the old order and bring balance to the cosmos. His earliest myths were filled with rebellion, cunning, and destiny, qualities that marked him as a god of transition, bridging the chaos of the Titans with the order of Olympus. Yet even in victory, Zeus's story was not one of simple dominance. He was both the conqueror and the caretaker, the storm and the calm that followed it. Zeus's weapon, the thunderbolt, forged by the Cyclopes during the Titanomachy, was the ultimate symbol of divine authority. It represented not only physical power, but also the ability to restore balance, to strike when necessary, but never without purpose. To the Greeks, thunder was the voice of Zeus himself, and lightning was his judgment made visible. When storms rolled across the mountains, farmers and sailors looked to the sky not merely in fear, but in reverence. It was said that Zeus's will could be seen in every flash, heard in every rumble. He was, as the poet said, the cloud gatherer, the one who governed the rhythm of the world above. Yet Zeus was more than the god of thunder. He was the embodiment of cosmic justice, what the Greeks called dike, and his rule was defined by maintaining the balance between gods, mortals, and nature. The idea of Zeus Nomios, or Zeus the lawgiver, was central to Greek life. He upheld oaths, punished liars, and protected the sacred laws of hospitality, known as xenia. To betray a guest, to mistreat a stranger, was to offend Zeus himself. In this way, Zeus became not only a celestial ruler, but the invisible foundation of morality and social order. In Homer's Iliad, Zeus appears as both majestic and conflicted. He presides over the divine council, his decisions shaping the fate of heroes below. Yet he is also portrayed as a god who feels deeply, capable of love, pity, and even sorrow. When his son Sarpedon faces death on the battlefield, Zeus debates whether to save him, torn between divine compassion and the unbending laws of fate. Ultimately, he allows Sarpedon to die, for even Zeus, the mightiest of gods, cannot defy destiny. This moment reveals the depth of Greek theology. Even the king of the gods is bound by an order greater than himself, an eternal balance that governs all existence. Zeus's relationships were equally complex. His marriage to Hera, goddess of marriage and family, was both sacred and tumultuous. Their union symbolized the structure of divine authority, a king and queen presiding over gods and mortals alike. But Zeus's many affairs with goddesses and mortals brought constant strife to their household. Each love story carried symbolic weight, reflecting different aspects of nature, humanity, and divine power. When Zeus united with Leto, their children were Apollo and Artemis, twin embodiments of light and harmony. With Demeter, he fathered Persephone, whose abduction by Hades would explain the turning of the seasons. With the mortal Semele, he conceived Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy, representing life's capacity for joy and transformation. Through these unions, Zeus populated not only the heavens, but the world with divine forces, each child an expression of his will, his passion, and his role as the source of all divine energy. Despite his flaws, the Greeks saw in Zeus a reflection of the ideal ruler, powerful yet wise, stern yet just. He could punish arrogance, but he could also reward piety and honor. When mortals prayed for fairness, when kings swore oaths, or judges sought truth, it was to Zeus they turned. His temples stood in every city-state, often on high ground, symbolizing his dominion over both earth and sky. The grandest of these was the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, home to the legendary statue by Phidias, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Seated upon a throne of ivory and gold, the colossal figure held a scepter crowned with an eagle, his sacred bird, and a small statue of Nike, the goddess of victory. To stand before it was to feel the presence of something far beyond human scale, a reminder of divine majesty and cosmic order. The eagle itself was not chosen by accident. To the Greeks, the eagle represented vision, strength, and the ability to soar between heaven and earth. It was said to carry Zeus's messages and to perch beside his throne, watching all that transpired below. Another sacred symbol of Zeus was the oak tree, particularly the ancient one at Dodona, Greece's oldest oracle. There, priests and priestesses interpreted the rustling of the oak leaves as the voice of the god. Unlike the famed oracle of Delphi, which belonged to Apollo, Dodona's messages were primal, direct, and rooted in the natural world. The whisper of Zeus in the wind. Zeus also carried the title of Zeus Xenios, protector of travelers and guests, a divine overseer of hospitality. This aspect of his personality reveals the moral depth of Greek religion. For the Greeks, religion was not merely about rituals or offerings, it was about conduct. To honor Zeus meant to act with respect, kindness, and fairness toward others. A traveler knocking at your door might be a stranger, or Zeus himself in disguise. Countless myths reinforce this idea, where mortals who showed generosity were rewarded, and those who displayed cruelty or greed were punished without mercy. But Zeus's rule was not uncontested. In myth after myth, he faced challenges that tested his authority, from the rebellion of the giants to the trickery of Prometheus, who defied him by stealing fire for mankind. Prometheus's punishment, chained to a rock as an eagle, devoured his liver each day, was one of the most haunting tales of divine retribution. Yet even this act reflected Zeus's complex nature. He punished rebellion, yes, but he also recognized the necessity of human progress. In time, Zeus allowed Prometheus's suffering to end, showing that even his wrath could yield to compassion and balance. Zeus was, in many ways, the ultimate paradox: omnipotent, yet restrained, passionate, yet wise, distant yet intimately involved in the affairs of gods and men. His myths reveal a god who embodies both chaos and control, reflecting the dual nature of the universe itself. When storms broke across the Aegean or thunder echoed through the mountains, the Greeks did not fear destruction. They recognized the presence of their king, the eternal reminder that power, when guided by wisdom, was the foundation of all order. It is easy to think of Zeus simply as a sky god, a thunder thrower, but to the Greeks, he was far more than that. He was the soul of divine authority, the heart of moral law, and the protector of civilization itself. Without Zeus, there would be no justice, no balance, no harmony between gods and mortals. His rule was the invisible structure holding the universe together. Even centuries later, when Greek religion began to fade under the rise of new philosophies and faiths, Zeus endured, not as a literal figure, but as a symbol. Philosophers like Plato and the Stoics saw in him the embodiment of reason, of universal order, what they called logos. His thunderbolts became metaphors for truth and enlightenment. His sky, the realm of divine intelligence. In this way, Zeus transcended mythology and became a timeless idea, the ever-present force of balance in a chaotic world. From the heights of Olympus, he looked down upon all creation, not as a tyrant, but as a father. And when the thunder rolled across the heavens, the people of ancient Greece would pause, look upward, and whisper a quiet prayer, knowing that somewhere above the clouds, the ruler of all still watched over them. If Zeus embodies the raw power and authority of the cosmos, then Hera represents its order, its stability, and its intimate connection to human life. Known as the Queen of Olympus, Hera was both the sister and consort of Zeus, the goddess of marriage, family, and fidelity. But to reduce her to a single role would be to misunderstand the depth and complexity of her place in Greek belief. Hera was a figure of reverence and fear, of nurture and judgment, and her story reveals much about how the ancient Greeks understood the divine, social, and moral order. Hera's origin, like that of many Olympians, begins in the older generation of gods. She was the daughter of Cronus and Rhea, swallowed at birth by her father and later freed by Zeus, her brother, and eventual husband. From the moment she emerged, Hera carried with her an aura of authority, grace, and dignity. She was not merely Zeus's partner, but a goddess whose influence extended across the heavens and into the daily lives of mortals. Her domains were profound: the sanctity of marriage, the health and protection of women, and the continuity of families in a society that prized familial lineage and social structure. Hera's role was essential. Hera was worshipped in cities and sanctuaries across the Greek world. One of her earliest and most important centers of worship was Argos, a city in the Peloponnese, where the people regarded her as the protector of their community and their royal lineage. At her temples, priests performed elaborate rituals, offering sacrifices and prayers to ensure her favor. Animal offerings, often cows, whose fertility symbolized abundance, were common. These rituals were not mere formality. They were attempts to align human life with the rhythms of divine order, recognizing that marriage, childbirth, and family prosperity were matters of both human effort and divine blessing. Yet Hera's myths are full of tension, particularly in her relationship with Zeus. The ancient Greeks portrayed her as intensely loyal to the principles of marriage, yet perpetually challenged by her husband's infidelities. Stories abound of her jealousy and vengeance toward Zeus's lovers and their children. These tales were not simply moral lessons about fidelity, they were symbolic explorations of the complexities of power, desire, and justice. Hera's wrath could be fierce, but it was always tied to her role as the guardian of sacred bonds. She enforced the rules of the household and the divine family, reminding both gods and mortals that chaos in personal relationships could ripple outward, disturbing the balance of the cosmos itself. One of Hera's most famous myths is her role in the judgment of Paris, the story that ultimately led to the Trojan War. When Paris, a mortal prince, was asked to choose the fairest goddess among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, Hera offered him power and dominion over all of Asia. Though he ultimately chose Aphrodite, Hera's involvement in the tale reflects her concern with status, authority, and the consequences of human choice. Through such myths, the Greeks explored themes of divine influence in mortal affairs, illustrating that gods like Hera were ever present participants in the moral and social fabric of life. Hera's influence extended far beyond individual myths. She was worshipped as Hera Teleia, the goddess who perfects marriage, and as Hera Basileia, the queen who oversees order and governance. Festivals in her honor, such as the Heraia, included athletic competitions and religious processions, drawing communities together in celebration of her protection and guidance. These festivals reinforced social cohesion, reminding citizens that the divine was intertwined with their daily lives, that the favor of the gods, particularly Hera's, was essential for prosperity and harmony. Despite her power and prominence, Hera was not a passive figure. She exercised agency, strategy, and cunning, demonstrating that the Olympian gods were not static or predictable. Her interactions with mortals and gods alike reflect the Greeks' recognition that order and justice require vigilance and sometimes intervention. She could punish, she could protect, and she could guide, a divine embodiment of balance in the personal and communal spheres of life. Hera was also associated with nature and fertility, connecting the domestic with the cosmic. Sacred springs, groves, and altars were often dedicated to her, places where women could pray for children or seek protection during childbirth. Her divine presence was both nurturing and commanding, linking the cycles of human life with the overarching order of the universe. To honor Hera was to honor continuity, stability, and the sacred bonds that hold communities together. Her portrayal in literature reflects this duality. In Homer's Iliad, she is a formidable presence at the Council of Gods, capable of persuasion, anger, and diplomacy. She aids the Greeks in their battles, plotting against her husband when necessary, yet always in service of her principles and her understanding of justice. In other myths, her jealousy is fierce, punishing those who defy the moral or social order. This complex depiction made Hera a goddess who was not only feared, but respected, someone whose favor could elevate families and cities, and whose wrath could devastate them. Hera's symbolism extended into art and culture as well. Statues, reliefs, and vase paintings depict her seated majestically, crowned with a diadem, sometimes holding a scepter or accompanied by a peacock, her sacred bird. The peacock, with its eye-like tail feathers, symbolized watchfulness, pride, and eternal beauty. It was said that the eyes came from the 100-eyed giant Argus, whom Hera had placed in the sky as stars. Through such imagery, the Greeks communicated her vigilance, her authority, and her ever-present gaze over the world of gods and humans alike. By the time classical Greece flourished, Hera had become not only a powerful Olympian goddess, but a cultural archetype, the protector of marriage, the enforcer of sacred law, and the divine embodiment of order and dignity. She represented the intersection of human society and cosmic balance, reminding mortals that the bonds of family, fidelity, and social responsibility were not merely personal choices, but sacred duties observed by the highest powers of the universe. Even as Greek religion evolved, Hera's presence endured. In philosophy and literature, she was invoked as a symbol of authority, the guardian of stability, and a reminder that even the mightiest power, Zeus himself, could not disregard the principles she embodied. Her worship and myths illustrate a fundamental truth about ancient Greek belief that the divine was multifaceted, combining power with responsibility, passion with reason, and wrath with protection. In the vast tapestry of Olympus, Hera stands as a pillar of order. She is the queen who balances her husband's thunder, the goddess who nurtures life while enforcing its sacred laws, and the vigilant mother and protector of both gods and humans. To honor Hera was to recognize the sacred structures that sustain society, marriage, family, and communal harmony, and to acknowledge that in both divine and mortal realms, balance and respect were the foundation of existence. If Zeus ruled the sky and Hera presided over marriage and family, then Poseidon ruled the world beneath and around us, the seas, the rivers, the earthquakes, and all watery realms. To the ancient Greeks, the ocean was as mysterious and unpredictable as the sky, and Poseidon embodied that duality, creator and destroyer, giver of life and bringer of terror. His influence shaped not only their understanding of nature, but their survival, travel, trade, and spiritual worldview. Poseidon was one of the 6 children of Cronus and Rhea, brother to Zeus, Hera, Hestia, Demeter, and Hades. When Cronus devoured his children, Poseidon was swallowed and later freed by Zeus, joining his siblings in the rebellion against the Titans. Upon victory, Zeus assigned domains to each Olympian, and Poseidon claimed the sea as his own. But he was not limited to the water's surface. His power extended to rivers, lakes, storms, and even earthquakes, earning him the epithet Earthshaker. To the Greeks, every tremor in the earth, every violent storm at sea, was a sign of Poseidon's will, a reminder of the god's omnipresence and might. Poseidon's weapon, the trident, forged by the Cyclopes during the Titanomachy, was as iconic as Zeus's thunderbolt. With it, he could stir the waters into storms, split the earth to create chasms, and calm the oceans at will. In myths, the trident is often a tool of both punishment and creation, reflecting Poseidon's dual nature. Mariners and fishermen revered him, knowing that one moment he could grant safe passage across the Aegean, and the next unleash tempests that swallowed ships whole. Greek mythologies imbues Poseidon with a deeply human personality. He could be jealous, vengeful, and unpredictable, often reacting to slights, insults, or defiance. For instance, the story of Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey illustrates Poseidon's wrath. Because Odysseus blinded his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, Poseidon pursued him across the seas, creating storms and obstacles that prolonged his journey home for years. Yet, Poseidon was also capable of generosity. He provided horses for mortals, granted favorable winds to sailors who honored him, and shaped the landscape through rivers and springs. Poseidon's connection to horses is particularly fascinating. Many myths refer to him as Poseidon Hippios, the tamer and creator of horses. Some even claim that he gave horses to mankind as a gift. This duality, sea and horse, storm and domesticated power, reflects the Greek understanding of their god as a bridge between untamed natural forces and human civilization. Poseidon was both chaos and utility, wildness and craft. Worship of Poseidon was widespread, particularly among coastal cities and islands. Sailors, fishermen, and traders often built altars along the shore, offering sacrifices to ensure safe voyages. Rituals included libations of wine or oil poured into the sea, and sometimes even animal sacrifices, bulls being the most favored, to appease the god and gain his favor. The Isthmian Games, held in his honor near Corinth, were athletic competitions that combined sport, spectacle, and devotion, celebrating Poseidon's role as both protector and overseer of human endeavor. The Greeks also believed Poseidon controlled the earthquakes that shaped their mountainous land. The term earthshaker was not poetic exaggeration, but a literal acknowledgement of natural phenomena. When tremors occurred, they were attributed to Poseidon's anger, and prayers or offerings were made to placate him. This connection between the sea, the earth, and human life reflects the Greek worldview. Divine forces were inseparable from the physical world, and understanding them meant respecting the balance of nature. Poseidon's personality in myth is vividly complex. He could be impulsive, reacting to personal slights or challenges from other gods. In the Trojan War, for example, Poseidon sided with the Greeks because they honored him, while opposing heroes or cities who neglected his worship faced storms, floods, or other misfortune. His alliances were strategic, his interventions direct, and his presence a constant reminder that mortals lived in a world of forces far greater than themselves. Poseidon's relationships also shaped mythology. His consort, Amphitrite, a sea goddess, exemplified his dominion over the oceans. Together, they produced children like Triton, a merman who served as messenger of the sea. Poseidon's many liaisons with mortals, nymphs, and deities illustrate the interweaving of divine and human spheres, the way the Olympians could influence life in unpredictable, intimate ways. Children of Poseidon, such as Theseus in some traditions, were often heroes, reflecting the god's enduring impact on the human world. Art and iconography further reveal Poseidon's essence. Statues depict him wielding the trident, hair and beard flowing as if in a storm, sometimes accompanied by sea creatures or horses. Face paintings often show him riding waves or striking the earth, emphasizing his command over both water and land. His symbols, the trident, the horse, the dolphin, all convey the duality of his power, destructive yet creative, chaotic yet essential. Poseidon also played a vital role in Greek culture's understanding of divine hierarchy. Unlike Zeus, who represented authority and law, Poseidon was a god of natural forces, embodying both respect and fear. To honor him was to acknowledge that life depended on forces beyond human control. The sea's generosity and fury, the earth's stability and tremor. Poseidon's presence reminded mortals of their vulnerability and their need for humility, devotion, and courage. Through centuries of worship, myth, and storytelling, Poseidon became more than a sea god. He was a symbol of the unpredictable yet essential forces that govern life, a figure whose influence extended from the oceans to the land, from natural phenomena to human affairs. He reminded the Greeks that power could be both awe-inspiring and dangerous, that survival required respect for forces beyond their comprehensions, and that the gods were present in every storm, every flood, and every wave that lapped the shore. To this day, Poseidon endures as a symbol of nature's immense power, a reminder that even in calm waters, the currents below are unseen, and that life, like the sea, is both beautiful and unpredictable. In the minds of the ancient Greeks, there was no separation between the divine and the world. Poseidon ruled both realms with majesty, strength, and eternal presence. While Zeus commanded the sky, Hera maintained order, and Poseidon ruled the seas. Another figure reigned over a realm that mortals feared yet could not ignore: Hades, the god of the underworld. Unlike his brothers, Hades' domain was the world beneath the earth, the shadowed realm where all mortals ultimately traveled. Yet Hades was far more than a grim figure of death. He was a vital guardian of balance, a ruler who ensured that life and death followed the natural order, and a god whose myths reveal both justice and inevitability. Hades was the third son of Cronus and Rhea, swallowed by his father at birth and later freed by Zeus. Following the defeat of the Titans, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades drew lots to divide the cosmos. Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon the seas, and Hades the underworld, leaving the earth shared among all three. Though he dwelled below the surface, Hades' influence extended to all aspects of life. Mortals depended on him as the final arbiter of destiny, the one who welcomed souls into the afterlife, and the god who maintained the natural cycle of birth, growth, and death. The Greeks imagined the underworld as a vast, complex realm, not merely a place of torment. It was divided into regions: the asphodel meadows, where ordinary souls wandered; the Elysian fields, reserved for heroes and the righteous; and Tartarus, a deep, shadowy pit where the wicked or rebellious were punished. Hades ruled all these realms with impartial authority. Unlike the often emotional and reactive gods of Olympus, Hades' demeanor was calm, measured, and just. He did not delight in punishment for its own sake. He maintained cosmic order, ensuring that every soul found its rightful place. Central to Hades' myths is his relationship with Persephone, the daughter of Demeter. The tale of her abduction is one of the most enduring and symbolically rich stories in Greek mythology. Hades, enamored by her beauty, took Persephone to the underworld to be his queen. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, grieved so deeply that the earth itself became barren. Crops failed, famine spread, and humans suffered. Finally, a compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year with Hades in the underworld and the remainder with her mother on the surface. This myth explains the changing seasons, reflecting the ancient Greeks' attempt to understand natural cycles and the interdependence of life, death, and renewal. Hades' character is often misunderstood by modern interpretations. He is not the devil-like figure of later religions. He is not inherently evil or vengeful. In many myths, Hades acts with fairness and respect, abiding by the rules that govern mortals and gods alike. He enforces the finality of death, but he does so without cruelty or personal malice. In this way, Hades embodies the inevitability of mortality, a necessary counterpart to the life-giving powers of Zeus, Poseidon, and Demeter. Worship of Hades was notably different from that of other Olympians. While temples were dedicated to Zeus and Poseidon, Hades' sanctuaries were rare. He was approached with caution, often through rituals performed in secret or at tombs and cemeteries. Offerings included black animals, sheep or goats, and libations made to appease the god and ensure the proper passage of souls. The Greeks recognized that Hades' favor was crucial not only for the dead, but for the living. Proper burial rites and respectful behavior toward the dead maintained social and cosmic order. Hades, symbols, the Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the entrance to the underworld, and the Bident, his two-pronged staff, highlight his role as guardian and enforcer. Cerberus ensured that no soul escaped and no living being entered without permission, symbolizing the inviolability of death. The Bident, in contrast to Zeus's thunderbolt or Poseidon's trident, reflects authority exercised quietly but decisively. Hades' power was absolute, yet understated, emphasizing law and balance over spectacle or emotion. Myths also reveal Hades' interactions with heroes. Orpheus descended into his realm to retrieve his beloved Eurydice, Persephone interceding on his behalf. Heracles briefly entered the underworld to capture Cerberus as part of his 12 labors. These stories emphasize that Hades was not a villain, but a gatekeeper, maintaining the rules of life and death while allowing for divine negotiation under special circumstances. Philosophically, Hades represents the necessary counterpart to existence itself. The Greeks understood that life and death are inseparable. Hades' rule ensures continuity, reminding mortals that every action has consequences and that the soul's journey does not end at the moment of death, but continues according to divine justice. In this sense, Hades is a god of balance, a presence as essential to the cosmos as Zeus' law or Poseidon's storms. Artistic depictions reinforce Hades' majesty and solemnity. Vase paintings often show him seated on a throne in the underworld, crowned with a dark wreath, holding the bident, sometimes accompanied by Persephone or Cerberus. Sculptures and reliefs emphasize his calm authority, portraying him as a god who commands respect rather than fear. Even when associated with death, Hades' representation reflects dignity, governance, and the inevitability of the natural order. Hades' significance in Greek religion also extends to his role in shaping human behavior. By embodying death and the afterlife, he reminded mortals of their mortality, encouraging piety, moral conduct, and respect for the gods. His presence reinforced social norms surrounding burial, reverence for ancestors, and the recognition that divine law extends beyond life itself. In summary, Hades is more than a god of death. He is a guardian, a judge, and a stabilizing force in the universe. His reign beneath the earth ensures the proper flow of life and death, linking mortals to the cycles of nature and the moral order established by the Olympians. Unlike the flamboyant power of Zeus or the tempestuous energy of Poseidon, Hades' authority is subtle, enduring, and absolute, a quiet force that underpins existence itself. Through Hades, the Greeks confronted the most profound realities of life: mortality, justice, and the inescapable balance of the cosmos. He is the shadow that gives shape to light, the silence that makes sound meaningful, and the eternal presence that reminds mortals of the delicate thread connecting life, death, and divine order. In the tapestry of Olympus, Hades' domain is dark, yet vital. a solemn reminder that the divine governs not only the visible world, but the hidden depths that sustain it. Amid the thunder of Zeus and the roaring waves of Poseidon, there is one figure whose presence embodies both intellect and strategy, the delicate balance of reason and action. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, courage, and strategic warfare. Unlike other deities, Athena combines the seemingly opposing forces of intellect and combat, creating a divine model for human excellence, governance, and morality. To the ancient Greeks, she was not only a warrior, but a guide, a protector of cities, and a symbol of civilized life, the embodiment of knowledge applied with purpose. Athena's birth is unique and emblematic of her exceptional nature. According to myth, she did not emerge from the usual maternal womb. Instead, she sprang fully grown and armored from the head of Zeus, the king of gods, after he experienced a severe headache. Hephaestus, the divine smith, cleaved Zeus's skull to relieve the pain, and out came Athena, radiant with armor, spear in hand, and a calm, commanding presence. This extraordinary birth symbolizes her intimate connection with wisdom, Sophia, and intellect. She is a product of thought itself, the mind of Zeus made manifest. Athena's nature is thus inseparable from reason, planning, and foresight. She is the goddess who embodies cerebral strength rather than raw emotional power. Athena is often depicted with her iconic symbols: the owl, representing vigilance and wisdom; the olive tree, symbolizing peace, prosperity, and sustenance; the shield, often bearing the Gorgon Medusa's head; and the spear, emphasizing her role as a protector and strategist in warfare. These symbols collectively reflect her dual nature. She is a goddess of both guidance and defense, of cultivation and combat. Unlike Ares, who embodies chaotic violence, Athena represents calculated, disciplined warfare, the type that safeguards civilization rather than destroys it indiscriminately. Athena's influence in human affairs is profound, particularly in matters of city-states, governance, and civic responsibility. She is closely associated with Athens, a city that bears her name and honors her as its patron deity. According to myth, Athena and Poseidon once competed to become the city's protector. Poseidon offered a saltwater spring or a horse, symbols of strength and mobility, but Athena gifted the olive tree, a source of food, oil, and wood. Her gift symbolized growth, sustenance, and wisdom, aligning the city with progress, strategy, and the enduring benefits of civilization. The people chose Athena, cementing her role as a guardian of law, culture, and urban life. In literature, Athena is portrayed as a goddess who intervenes in human affairs with care, balance, and strategy. In Homer's Iliad, she guides heroes like Odysseus and Diomedes, offering counsel and tactical advantage rather than brute force. Athena embodies strategic intelligence, teaching mortals to balance courage with foresight. She is not impulsive. She does not act out of emotion, but rather out of reasoned judgment, reflecting the Greek ideal that wisdom should temper strength. Athena also has a role in justice and moral order. She aids the righteous, punishes hubris, and upholds laws and oaths. In myths like the trial of Orestes, Athena mediates the balance between revenge and justice, establishing legal principles that echo through Greek society. Her impartiality reinforces her association with rationality and fairness. She is a goddess who governs thought, ethics, and action in harmony. Despite her martial abilities, Athena is also associated with craft, skill, and domestic arts, particularly weaving. This duality further emphasizes her connection to civilization. She is both a warrior and a nurturer, a goddess who protects cities while fostering culture, creativity, and self-discipline. Her teachings encourage mortals to cultivate skill, intellect, and moral responsibility, embodying the ideal that power without wisdom is destructive, but wisdom without action is ineffectual. Athena's myths also explore themes of independence, discipline, and strategic cunning. She is a virgin goddess, maintaining autonomy and self-determination. Unlike many Olympians whose narratives focus on passion or desire, Athena's story is one of intellect, rational action, and purpose. Her virginity symbolizes freedom from chaotic influence, a conscious choice that aligns with her role as a guardian of order and civilization. Temples and sanctuaries dedicated to Athena, such as the Parthenon in Athens, were not only religious centers but cultural hubs. Festivals like the Pantheon celebrated her guidance, wisdom, and protection, incorporating processions, athletic competitions, and artistic displays. These civic rituals reinforced her connection to the city, symbolizing the alignment of divine wisdom with human governance. Athena was not a distant deity. She was a guiding presence, shaping the moral, intellectual, and civic life of the polis. Athena's influence extends beyond war and wisdom. She mediates conflicts among gods, advises mortals in critical endeavors, and ensures that strategy, knowledge, and justice govern both human and divine affairs. Myths often depict her intervening at critical moments, helping heroes succeed not by overpowering foes, but by teaching them how to act wisely. In this sense, Athena embodies the principle that guidance, intellect, and foresight can achieve more enduring results than mere force, a lesson that resonates across Greek culture and philosophy. Her relationship with other gods is equally significant. She counsels Zeus, participates in the deliberations of Olympus, and often serves as a balancing influence against impulsive or destructive behavior among deities. Her presence represents a stabilizing force within the pantheon, ensuring that divine power is tempered with reason and justice. In summary, Athena is the embodiment of balance between mind and action, intellect and martial prowess, civilization and natural strength. She is both a warrior and a scholar, a strategist and a moral guide. For the Greeks, Athena was a model for how power could be wielded with wisdom, how cities could thrive under guidance and intellect, and how human potential could be aligned with divine order. She is the goddess who watches over the mind, the polis, and the battlefield, ensuring that knowledge, strategy, and justice prevail over chaos and disorder. Through Athena, the Greeks learned that wisdom is not passive, that intelligence without action is incomplete, and that strength guided by reason can shape civilizations. She remains, in myth and symbol, the eternal protector of thought, strategy, and human ingenuity, a divine presence reminding mortals that the highest achievements are those where intellect and courage meet. If Athena represents strategic, disciplined warfare, then Ares embodies its opposite, the raw, chaotic, and violent energy of battle. Known as the god of war, Ares personifies the blood, rage, and frenzy that accompany conflict. To the Greeks, he was a powerful and fearsome figure, inspiring both awe and caution. Unlike his sister Athena, who represents intellect and calculated action, Ares represents the untamed passions of combat, the primal forces that arise when conflict overtakes reason. Ares was one of the 12 Olympians, the son of Zeus and Hera. From birth, his life was intertwined with violence and strife. Myths portray him as aggressive, impulsive, and unpredictable, a deity whose presence on the battlefield was both exhilarating and terrifying. He is often described as tall, muscular, and clad in armor, radiating fury and strength. The mere mention of his name evoked fear, and soldiers would invoke him before battle to inspire courage or dread in equal measure. Unlike Athena, Ares was not widely revered in Greek culture. While he had temples and cults, his worship was more limited and often associated with regions where warlike societies flourished. Spartans, for instance, honored him for his martial prowess and the courage he could instill in soldiers, whereas other city-states often viewed him with ambivalence, recognizing the destructive consequences of uncontrolled conflict. The Greeks admired his strength, but feared the chaos he represented, acknowledging that unrestrained violence could threaten both society and civilization. Ares' myths reveal both his power and his human-like flaws. He is frequently depicted as hot-tempered, easily provoked, and often outwitted by clever gods or mortals. In Homer's Iliad, Ares participates in battles on both sides, sometimes switching allegiances, illustrating his unpredictability. Even among the gods, he is not the strategic mastermind. He embodies the fury and ferocity of war itself, leaving victory or defeat to chance and circumstance. His power is visceral, immediate, and terrifying, a force of nature more than a ruler of outcomes. Ares' relationship with other deities further highlights his character. His love affair with Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, is one of the most famous stories in Greek mythology. Their union represents the paradox of passion and violence, combining desire with danger. Yet even in these stories, Ares' personality is complex. He is neither wholly villainous nor heroic. He is essential, representing the human experiences of anger, competition, and conflict. Through his myths, the Greeks explored the necessity of courage and strength, while also acknowledging the destructive consequences of unchecked aggression. His symbols, the spear, helmet, and chariot, all reinforce his connection to the battlefield. Unlike Athena's carefully wielded weapons, Ares' arms symbolize the direct, brutal force of combat. In art, he is often depicted leading armies, charging into battle with relentless energy, his expression fierce and unyielding. Animals, such as dogs and vultures, are also associated with him, creatures that scavenge on the spoils of conflict, reinforcing his role as the god who embodies the violence of war. Despite his fearsome nature, Ares also played a role in Greek culture as a cautionary figure. Myths involving him frequently demonstrate the consequences of rash action and the dangers of succumbing to unrestrained anger. Mortals and gods who acted impulsively often suffered, emphasizing that courage without wisdom can lead to destruction. In this way, Ari's stories are not simply tales of violence, they are lessons in balance, showing that power and passion must be tempered with strategy and foresight, qualities embodied by Athena. Ares' influence extended into rituals and festivals. Though these were often martial in nature, communities invoked him before battle, seeking his favor to inspire warriors and secure victory. Sacrifices, often of animals, were made to appease him, reflecting the Greeks' understanding that war was both necessary and dangerous. By honoring Ares, they acknowledged the inevitability of conflict while attempting to manage its destructive potential. Interestingly, Ares' portrayal in Greek literature contrasts with his Roman counterpart, Mars, who became a more disciplined, revered figure. In Greek tradition, Ares is ambivalent, embodying the chaotic, unpredictable nature of battle rather than the orderly and patriotic aspects celebrated by the Romans. This distinction highlights how the Greeks viewed war itself as a necessary force that must be respected and feared, not romanticized. In myth, Ares is also linked to heroism and courage. Heroes who engage in battle may encounter him directly, learning lessons about bravery, endurance, and the price of violence. Yet Ares is never a guide or teacher. He is the embodiment of the battlefield's raw energy. His presence tests mortals and gods alike, revealing character, strength, and morality under pressure. Ares' mythology ultimately serves as a mirror to human nature. He represents aggression, conflict, and raw power, traits present in every society and individual. The Greeks recognized that these forces, while potentially destructive, are also inevitable. By personifying them in a god, they could explore the nature of violence, morality, and human behavior in a structured, symbolic way. In this sense, Ares is not merely a god of war. He is a lens through which humanity examines courage, fear, and the consequences of action. In art and literature, Ares is portrayed as both awe-inspiring and dangerous. Vase paintings often show him in the heat of battle, sometimes wounded or in retreat, emphasizing the volatility of war. Unlike the calm wisdom of Athena or the impartial justice of Hades, Ares' power is immediate, emotional, and unpredictable, a vivid reminder that conflict can erupt without warning, with consequences both heroic and tragic. Through Ares, the Greeks understood that war is a force to be reckoned with, not merely glorified. He teaches that strength must be tempered, courage guided, and passion balanced. While Athena represents the calculated application of force, Ares embodies its raw energy, the fire of combat that both inspires and destroys. Together, these deities create a full vision of warfare, one that blends intellect with action, strategy with instinct, and order with chaos. Ares endures in myth as a symbol of war's dual nature, terrifying yet essential, dangerous yet unavoidable. He reminds mortals and gods alike that conflict is part of life and that mastery over one's impulses and respect for strength are crucial for survival. To the Greeks, acknowledging Ares was to acknowledge the power of violence and passion, forces that shape the world, test human resolve, and reveal the deeper truths of courage, fear, and morality. While Ares embodies the fierce, untamed energy of war, Aphrodite represents its counterbalance, the power of attraction, beauty, and desire. She is the goddess of love, passion, and sensuality, whose presence can inspire devotion, jealousy, and even conflict. To the Greeks, Aphrodite was not merely a figure of romance, she was a cosmic force, shaping human relationships, motivating heroes, and influencing the fates of gods and mortals alike. Aphrodite's origins are as poetic as they are extraordinary. According to the Theogony by Hesiod, she was born from the sea foam, the white froth that arose when the severed genitals of Uranus, the sky god, were cast into the ocean by Cronus. From this foam emerged Aphrodite, fully grown and radiating irresistible beauty. In another tradition, she is considered the daughter of Zeus and Dione, tying her origin to the Olympian order. Both accounts convey a central truth. Aphrodite is inherently connected to creation, fertility, and attraction, forces that are both generative and transformative. Aphrodite's influence is universal, extending across mortal and divine realms. She governs desire, drawing individuals together, shaping relationships, and inspiring love, lust, and devotion. Yet her power is not limited to joy or pleasure. It also carries the potential for chaos. The myths often depict gods and mortals alike ensnared by her charms, demonstrating that love, while beautiful, can also be unpredictable, disruptive, and even dangerous. This duality reflects the Greek understanding of love as a force that can create life, art, and civilization, but also incite jealousy, rivalry, and war. One of the most famous myths illustrating Aphrodite's power is the judgment of Paris, which ultimately led to the Trojan War. Paris, a mortal prince, was asked to choose the fairest goddess among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Promised the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, Paris awarded the prize to Aphrodite. This single choice sparked a chain of events that reshaped Greek mythological history, demonstrating that love, desire, and attraction are forces potent enough to alter destinies and ignite conflicts among gods and mortals. Aphrodite's connection to other gods is particularly notable. Her relationship with Ares embodies the union of love and war, passion and violence. Together, they symbolize the intense, sometimes destructive, energy of desire. She is also associated with Hermes, Dionysus, and even mortals like Anchises, reflecting her ability to intertwine divine influence with human lives. Her children, including Eros, Cupid, Phobos, and Deimos, carry aspects of attraction, fear, and tension, highlighting the complex ways desire interacts with emotion and action. Aphrodite's symbols further convey her nature. The dove, swan, and sparrow represent love and grace, while the rose and myrtle are tied to beauty and fertility. Shells, particularly the scallop shell, signify her birth from the sea and her association with fluidity, transformation, and the life-giving power of attraction. In art, she is often depicted emerging from the ocean, nude or semi-nude, radiating both innocence and power, a visual reminder that love is as captivating as it is inevitable. Worship of Aphrodite was widespread, with cults and temples throughout Greece and the Mediterranean. Cities such as Cyprus and Cythera were particularly important centers, emphasizing her connection to the sea and the life-giving forces of nature. Her rites ranged from festivals celebrating fertility and marriage to rituals acknowledging the complexities of desire, passion, and attraction. These practices reflect the Greek understanding that love is a divine force capable of both blessing and disrupting human life. Aphrodite's influence extends beyond romance. She inspires creativity, poetry, and artistic expression, embodying the human impulse to create and connect. Many Greek myths depict her as intervening in mortal and divine affairs, guiding relationships, inspiring passion, and sometimes inciting competition. Her presence is dynamic. She does not merely bless love, she shapes it, molds it, and at times tests its resilience. Her role in Greek morality and society is equally significant. While often associated with personal desire, Aphrodite also governs the social and familial dimensions of love, including marriage and fertility. As a divine arbiter of attraction, she reminds mortals that love is not purely personal, but interconnected with social, political, and cosmic orders. A husband, wife, or city-state that ignores or disrespects the forces of desire risks disorder, conflict, or divine disfavor. In literature, Aphrodite is depicted as both playful and formidable. She can charm, persuade, and manipulate, yet she also commands respect through her enduring influence. Homer, Hesiod, and later playwrights frequently illustrate her duality. Love can inspire heroism, devotion, and creation, or it can incite jealousy, betrayal, and tragedy. Through these narratives, Aphrodite embodies the transformative power of attraction, its ability to shape history, destiny, and human experience. In art and culture, Aphrodite's iconography conveys both vulnerability and authority. Sculptures like the Venus de Milo, though Hellenistic, continue the Greek tradition of representing her as the ideal of beauty and form, a physical manifestation of harmony, proportion, and allure. Vase paintings often show her interacting with gods and mortals, revealing her influence in divine councils, love affairs, and heroic quests. Her aesthetic presence reinforces her cosmic role. Love is not just an emotion, but a shaping force that underlies existence. Ultimately, Aphrodite embodies the power and complexity of desire. She is creation and seduction, beauty and influence, inspiration and challenge. She demonstrates that love is essential to life, yet demands respect and understanding. To the Greeks, honoring Aphrodite meant recognizing the importance of attraction, connection, and passion, acknowledging that these forces, like the sea or the sky, are both beautiful and uncontrollable, guiding human and divine actions alike. Through Aphrodite, the Greeks explored not only the pleasures of life, but the responsibilities and consequences of desire. She is a goddess of both joy and warning, a reminder that love can build civilizations or unravel them, inspire greatness or provoke chaos. In the intricate tapestry of Olympus, Aphrodite's presence is indispensable. She is the eternal force that stirs hearts, shapes destinies, and demonstrates that the most profound power often lies not in strength or intellect, but in attraction, connection, and the mysterious currents of desire. Among the Olympians, few deities exhibit the dynamism, cunning, and versatility of Hermes, the swift-footed messenger, guide of souls, and patron of travelers, merchants, and thieves. Hermes' role is multifaceted, blending communication, movement, and ingenuity into a single divine presence. To the Greeks, he was essential not only for his speed and eloquence, but for his ability to navigate boundaries between gods and mortals, life and death, order and chaos. Hermes was the son of Zeus and Maia, one of the Pleiades. Even as an infant, his cunning and energy were extraordinary. According to myth, just hours after his birth, he escaped from his cradle and stole the sacred cattle of Apollo. Cleverly covering his tracks, he demonstrated from the start the qualities that would define him: intelligence, resourcefulness, and audacity. When confronted by Apollo, Hermes did not hide his actions, but charmed his way into reconciliation, ultimately gifting the lyre he had created from a tortoise shell. This story encapsulates his essence: ingenuity, diplomacy, and the transformative power of clever action. Hermes' domains are numerous. As messenger of the gods, he carries instructions, warnings, and guidance between Olympus and the mortal world. His speed is legendary, allowing him to traverse realms in moments. This role emphasizes the importance the Greeks placed on communication, negotiation, and the flow of information, seeing Hermes as a divine facilitator of connections. Beyond messages, he is also the psychopomp, guiding souls to the underworld, ensuring that the dead reach Hades safely. In this capacity, Hermes bridges life and death, a liminal figure whose presence underscores the Greek understanding of cosmic balance and transition. Hermes' attributes reinforce his versatility. He wears the Taloria, winged sandals that grant incredible speed, and carries the caduceus, a staff entwined with two serpents, symbolizing negotiation, balance, and mediation. Often depicted wearing a traveler's hat and cloak, he embodies movement, freedom, and adaptability. His symbols, tortoise, rooster, ram, and tortoise-shell lyre, further convey his cunning, creativity, and connection to both domestic life and broader adventures. Unlike gods who wield power through force, Hermes relies on wit, strategy, and charm. This makes him a deity particularly relatable to humans, whose success often depends on cleverness, persuasion, and adaptability. Merchants, travelers, and thieves all honored Hermes, recognizing in him a patron who understood the subtleties of negotiation, navigation, and clever action. Festivals in his honor included processions and offerings, particularly in regions where trade and travel were vital, reflecting the practical significance of his divine guidance. Hermes also interacts dynamically with other gods. He assists Zeus in delivering messages, aids mortals in quests, and intervenes in divine conflicts with diplomacy and tact. In Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, Hermes escorts Priam to Achilles and guides Odysseus on various journeys, often ensuring that balance and communication are maintained between powerful beings. His actions emphasize the principle that knowledge, timing, and persuasion are as crucial as strength in resolving conflicts and navigating the world. The god's role as a guide of souls highlights his connection to mortality and the liminal spaces of life. When mortals die, Hermes ensures their transition to Hades, illustrating the Greek understanding of death not as an end but as a passage. His psychopomp function also emphasizes his impartiality and neutrality. He is neither punisher nor rewarder, but a facilitator of cosmic order. This subtle power contrasts with the more direct authority of Zeus or the destructive energy of Ares, underscoring Hermes' unique position in the divine hierarchy. Hermes' influence also extends to invention and innovation. In addition to creating the lyre, he is credited with introducing various arts and technologies, from writing and numerals to commerce and athletic contests. Through these myths, Hermes symbolizes the ingenuity and adaptability necessary for human progress, reinforcing his connection to both mortal and divine intelligence. He teaches that cleverness, creativity, and adaptability can shape destinies as effectively as force or authority. In art, Hermes is frequently depicted as youthful, athletic, and alert, often in motion or carrying his caduceus. Sculptures, vase paintings, and reliefs emphasize his agility, charm, and purposefulness. His representation as both messenger and guide conveys a balance of speed, intellect, and divine authority, illustrating the Greeks' appreciation for a god who embodies action coupled with wit. Hermes' worship in ancient Greece reflects his accessibility and versatility. Travelers left offerings at roadside shrines, merchants invoked his favor in trade, and athletes honored him before competitions. As a protector of boundaries, geographic, social, and spiritual, Hermes' role was to ensure safe passage, successful ventures, and the smooth flow of life. His presence reminds mortals that cleverness, timing, and communication are vital tools in navigating both the human and divine worlds. In summary, Hermes embodies mobility, intelligence, and mediation. He is a god of transition, a facilitator of connections, and a symbol of ingenuity. Where other gods rely on raw power, wisdom, or fury, Hermes relies on cunning, strategy, and speed, showing that influence can take many forms. His presence in Greek mythology underscores the importance of clever action, negotiation, and guidance, offering mortals a model for navigating challenges with intelligence and adaptability. Through Hermes, the Greeks explored the power of wit, communication, and mobility. He is a deity who moves freely across worlds, shaping outcomes not through force, but through insight and action. In the grand tapestry of Olympus, Hermes reminds both gods and humans that success and survival depend not only on strength or courage, but also on cunning, strategy, and the ability to navigate the ever-changing currents of life. In the pantheon of Olympus, where gods often embody power, war, and cunning, Demeter represents the quiet, sustaining forces of life, the fertility of the earth, the growth of crops, and the rhythm of the seasons. As the goddess of agriculture and harvest, she was essential to the survival of ancient Greek society, her influence shaping both daily life and spiritual understanding. Demeter's myths and worship reveal the deep connection the Greeks felt between humans and the natural world, and her presence underscores the divine orchestration of life's cycles. Demeter was one of the children of Cronus and Rhea, sister to Zeus, Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Poseidon. Unlike her siblings who wielded thunderbolts, tridents, or the sway of the underworld, Demeter's power was rooted in fertility, growth, and nourishment. Her domain was the soil itself, the grains and fruits that fed human populations, and the continuity of life through agriculture. In a society dependent on seasonal cycles, her favor was vital. Crop failure could lead to famine, social unrest, and mortality. Honoring Demeter was not merely ceremonial, but a matter of survival. The most famous myth associated with Demeter is the story of Persephone's abduction by Hades, which not only defines her narrative, but also explains the natural cycles of the earth. When Hades took Persephone to the underworld, Demeter's grief was profound. She withdrew her gifts from the world, causing the earth to become barren. This myth communicates the Greeks' understanding of the seasons. Winter represents Demeter's sorrow during Persephone's absence, while spring and summer reflect the goddess's joy upon her daughter's return. Through this story, the Greeks connected natural phenomena with human emotion and divine interaction, understanding life, growth, and death as interconnected cycles. Demeter's worship was widespread, particularly in agrarian regions, and her sanctuaries often existed near fertile lands. Farmers and villagers offered sacrifices and prayers for abundant harvests, from grain offerings to animal sacrifices, seeking her favor for fertility of the land and prosperity of their communities. Festivals such as the Thesmophoria, celebrated primarily by women, honored Demeter and Persephone and emphasized fertility, marriage, and the sacred bond between life and reproduction. These rituals highlighted both her nurturing and protective qualities, as well as her role in maintaining social and agricultural stability. Symbols associated with Demeter are deeply evocative. The sheaf of wheat, the cornucopia, poppies, and the torch, which she used to search for her daughter. The wheat and cornucopia signify sustenance and abundance, while the torch represents her relentless search for Persephone and her vigilance over the cycles of life. In art, Demeter is often depicted as a mature, dignified woman, carrying grain or standing among flourishing crops, emphasizing her nurturing authority and connection to the natural world. Demeter's power also extends to fertility and reproduction, not only in agriculture, but in human life. She is invoked for safe childbirth, the growth of families, and the prosperity of communities. Her dual concern for both crops and humans illustrates a broader Greek belief in the interconnectedness of all life, where divine forces sustain both the physical and social structures necessary for survival. The myth of Demeter and Persephone also highlights themes of balance, loss, and renewal. Demeter's grief and anger when Persephone is taken show the consequences of separation, while her eventual reunion restores harmony. This cyclical pattern mirrors the agricultural calendar, reinforcing the idea that life's challenges are part of natural and divine rhythms. Through these narratives, the Greeks recognized the inevitability of hardship, the promise of renewal, and the guiding hand of the divine in sustaining life. Demeter's interactions with other gods demonstrate her influence and authority. She negotiates with Zeus and Hades to ensure Persephone's partial return, showing her ability to engage in divine diplomacy. Unlike gods who rely on brute force or cunning alone, Demeter wields persistence, care, and moral authority. Her power lies not in destruction, but in the capacity to sustain life and enforce the natural order. In literature, Demeter is often portrayed as maternal, patient, and formidable. She is capable of great wrath, as seen when she withholds fertility from the earth, yet her anger is measured and purposeful. It is a reminder that even the most nurturing forces require respect and balance. Mortals who honored her received blessings. Those who ignored her laws risked famine and hardship, reinforcing the Greek principle that divine favor was contingent on reverence and ethical conduct. Demeter's presence also underscores the importance of women in Greek religious life. Festivals in her honor often centered on female communities, emphasizing fertility, family continuity, and social cohesion. Through Demeter, women could engage directly with divine forces that affected daily life, agriculture, and the well-being of families, making her worship both practical and spiritually significant. Moreover, Demeter's influence extends to morality and societal values. By controlling fertility and abundance, she implicitly reinforces notions of respect, responsibility, and gratitude. Her myths suggest that survival, prosperity, and harmony are earned through proper conduct, acknowledgement of divine power, and adherence to natural and social laws. In summary, Demeter embodies the essence of sustenance, fertility, and the natural cycles. She is the goddess who ensures that the earth produces life-giving crops, that families can grow and thrive, and that the rhythms of life are maintained through divine order. Through her myths, the Greeks understood the interconnectedness of human activity, divine influence, and the natural world, recognizing that survival and prosperity depend on respect, vigilance, and harmony with these forces. Through Demeter, the ancient Greeks learned that the divine is not only powerful, but nurturing, that life's continuity depends on balance and care, and that even in times of hardship, the promise of renewal and abundance endures. She is the sustaining hand that bridges human life and the natural world, the goddess whose presence reminds mortals that every harvest, every birth, and every season is touched by divine grace. Among the Olympians, where gods often wield power, command armies, or inspire love, Hephaestus stands out as the master of creation, ingenuity, and transformative skill. He is the god of fire, metalworking, blacksmithing, and craftsmanship, a divine artisan whose work shapes both the tools and the wonders of the world. Unlike gods who exercise brute strength or command the elements, Hephaestus's power lies in creativity, precision, and the transformative force of fire. Through him, the Greeks celebrated human skill and the sacred nature of labor. Hephaestus was the son of Hera, and in some myths, also of Zeus. Unlike his radiant and commanding siblings, Hephaestus was born physically imperfect, often described as lame or deformed. This difference did not diminish his divine significance. Instead, it framed him as a god whose strength comes from intellect, resilience, and mastery rather than physical perfection. His story embodies the principle that contribution and skill are as essential to the cosmos as brute force or beauty. Hephaestus's forge, often imagined deep within volcanoes, symbolizes the transformative power of fire, the ability to convert raw materials into tools, weapons, and art. He crafted incredible objects for gods and mortals alike: Zeus's thunderbolt, Hermes' winged sandals, Aphrodite's girdle of irresistible charm, Achilles' armor, and even automatons that could move and act as servants. These creations are not merely functional, they embody ingenuity, artistry, and divine precision, demonstrating that craftsmanship itself can exert influence comparable to raw strength or magic. Unlike Ares, who represents chaotic violence, or Athena, who embodies strategic warfare, Hephaestus demonstrates that skill and labor can shape the course of events. His work influences gods and humans alike, providing tools and weapons essential for survival, protection, and heroism. In this way, he is a god whose presence bridges the natural and human worlds, illustrating the sacred value of creation, labor, and problem solving. Hephaestus's relationships with other gods are particularly revealing. Though sometimes spurned by his mother Hera for his deformity and occasionally rejected by Aphrodite, he remains a figure of resilience, ingenuity, and moral consistency. Hephaestus's marriage to Aphrodite, despite her numerous infidelities, often highlights the tensions between creation and desire, labor and temptation. Moreover, his collaboration with other gods demonstrates the interdependence of the Olympians. Even the mighty Zeus relies on Hephaestus's craftsmanship, showing that intellect, skill, and diligence are indispensable to divine order. Symbols associated with Hephaestus reinforce his domain. The hammer, anvil, and tongs represent creation and transformation, while fire embodies both danger and opportunity. Volcanoes, considered his earthly forges, remind mortals that the elements of nature can be harnessed for constructive purposes. In art, Hephaestus is often depicted as muscular yet humble, working intently at his forge, reflecting the value the Greeks placed on focused labor, skill, and mastery. Hephaestus's worship was practical as well as spiritual. Artisans, metalworkers, blacksmiths, and craftsmen offered sacrifices and prayers in hopes of divine favor and inspiration. Cities often maintained sanctuaries near workshops or forges, emphasizing the sacredness of labor and the divine nature of creativity. Festivals, such as the Chalkaya, celebrated his craft, linking human productivity and ingenuity to divine blessing. Through these rituals, the Greeks reinforced the idea that skillful work is both practical and sacred. The myths of Hephaestus also explore themes of perseverance and innovation. Despite his physical limitations and social rejection, he achieves remarkable feats, demonstrating that intelligence, skill, and dedication can overcome obstacles. His inventions are not only practical, but transformative, shaping history, enabling heroism, and mediating conflicts. For instance, the automated bronze giants he creates to assist in battle, or the magical armor he fashions, reflect the Greeks' belief that creativity and labor are potent, almost magical, forces in the universe. Hephaestus's connection to fire is particularly significant. Fire represents destruction and renewal, danger, and utility. By mastering it, Hephaestus symbolizes humanity's ability to control nature, turning raw materials into tools and art. His forge is a liminal space, a place of transformation where chaos becomes order, raw potential becomes reality, and human ingenuity mirrors divine creativity. In literature, Hephaestus is often portrayed as patient, meticulous, and quietly powerful. Unlike gods who dominate through spectacle or emotion, Hephaestus's influence is enduring, cumulative, and constructive. Homer and Hesiod depict him as indispensable to the pantheon, providing not only tools and weapons, but also a moral lesson. Skill, dedication, and intellect are forms of divine power. His presence reminds mortals that progress and survival depend not only on strength, but on knowledge, creativity, and labor. Through Hephaestus, the Greeks also celebrated human craftsmanship. Blacksmiths, potters, and builders could see their skills mirrored in divine action, understanding that their labor, like Hephaestus, was meaningful and connected to cosmic order. He demonstrates that creation is not just functional, but sacred, linking the mundane tasks of daily life to the profound forces that shape the world. In summary, Hephaestus embodies skill, craftsmanship, and transformative power. He is the god who converts raw materials into tools, weapons, and art, who teaches perseverance and ingenuity, and who demonstrates that intellect and labor are essential to the survival and flourishing of both humans and gods. He reminds mortals that creation is sacred, that skill is a form of power, and that even those who are overlooked or underestimated can achieve greatness through focus, intelligence, and dedication. Through Hephaestus, the Greeks understood the divine value of labor, skill, and creativity. He is the embodiment of constructive power, a reminder that human ingenuity, when combined with dedication and insight, mirrors the transformative force of the gods themselves. In the grand tapestry of Olympus, Hephaestus is the quiet architect, the invisible hand shaping the cosmos, and the enduring symbol that creation, skill, and perseverance are as mighty as strength or wisdom. Among the Olympians, few deities embody both the delights and dangers of human experience as profoundly as Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, fertility, and transformation. Dionysus is a figure of paradox. He brings joy and liberation, yet also madness and chaos. He celebrates life's pleasures, yet challenges the boundaries of social and moral order. To the ancient Greeks, Dionysus represented the primal, ecstatic energies that lie beneath civilization, the forces that inspire creativity, ecstasy, and transformation. But that must be approached with respect and moderation. Dionysus's birth is as extraordinary as his nature. He is the son of Zeus and Semele, a mortal woman. Hera, jealous of the affair, tricked Semele into demanding that Zeus reveal himself in his full divine form, which mortals cannot survive. Semele perished in the encounter, but Zeus rescued the unborn child, sewing Dionysus into his thigh until he was ready to be born. A second divine birth. This duality, mortal and immortal, human and god, defines Dionysus's essence linking him simultaneously to earthly experiences and divine transcendence. Dionysus's domains are multifaceted. As the god of wine, he presides over both the intoxicating joys and the potential excesses of its consumption. Wine, for the Greeks, was a sacred substance, a conduit for divine experience, creativity, and communal bonding. Dionysus also embodies fertility, influencing the growth of crops, the vitality of animals, and the reproductive energies of humans. Beyond these, he governs ecstasy and transformation, leading rituals and celebrations that dissolve ordinary boundaries, encouraging participants to experience a direct, often overwhelming connection to the divine. The god's symbols illustrate his diverse influence. The thyrsus, a staff entwined with ivy and topped with a pine cone, signifies prosperity, fertility, and divine power. Grapevines and ivy themselves are sacred to him, symbolizing both growth and the intoxicating effects of wine. Animals, such as leopards and panthers, reflect his wild, untamed energy, and the drum and cymbals of his followers emphasize rhythmic, ecstatic movement. In art, Dionysus is frequently depicted as youthful and androgynous, often reclining with a cup of wine, accompanied by satyrs, maenads, or his loyal animals, suggesting a blend of pleasure, freedom, and divine authority. Dionysus's myths often explore themes of liberation, madness, and social transgression. He challenges conventional order, particularly the rigid structures of authority, gender, and morality. Maenads, his female followers, embody ecstatic freedom, abandoning fear, restraint, and social norms to honor the god. Through these myths, the Greeks explored the dual nature of pleasure and excess. Joy and ecstasy can inspire creativity and transcendence, yet unchecked, they can lead to chaos and destruction. One of Dionysus's most famous myths involves his confrontation with King Pentheus of Thebes, who refused to honor him. Through cunning and divine power, Dionysus inspires madness among Pentheus's mother and the other women of Thebes, culminating in the king's violent death. This story reflects the god's role as a force that demands recognition, reminding mortals that divine and natural forces cannot be ignored without consequence. It also highlights the tension between control and surrender, order and chaos, a central theme in Dionysian worship and Greek thought. Dionysus' influence is deeply connected to ritual and theater. Festivals such as the Dionysia in Athens celebrated his presence through wine, music, and dramatic performances. These events were not merely entertainment, they were sacred, providing communal experiences that allowed participants to explore emotion, identity, and mortality in a structured, transformative way. Tragedy and comedy, both central to Greek theater, owe much to the Dionysian tradition, illustrating how he inspired not only revelry, but also profound reflection on the human condition. The god's relationships with other deities reflect his liminal and unifying nature. He is often associated with Aphrodite, Ares, and Hermes, blending pleasure, passion, and cunning. Unlike more rigid Olympians, Dionysus moves fluidly between worlds, mortal and divine, order and chaos, restraint and excess. He embodies transformation itself, demonstrating that boundaries are permeable, identities mutable, and life's experiences layered with both risk and potential. Dionysus also represents a profound psychological and spiritual dimension. Through intoxication, ecstasy, and ritual, participants in his cult could achieve temporary liberation from fear, social convention, and rational constraint. This divine freedom allowed individuals to confront mortality, desire, and the mysteries of existence, linking pleasure and terror, life and death in an integrated, sacred experience. Dionysus teaches that surrender to divine forces within controlled contexts can provide insight, renewal, and deeper understanding. Art and literature frequently depict Dionysus's dual nature. Vase paintings show him riding leopards, holding wine cups, or dancing with Maenads, while later texts emphasize his power to both inspire and punish. His imagery conveys the tension between joy and danger, freedom and restraint, pleasure and responsibility. By honoring Dionysus, the Greeks recognized that life's energies, emotional, sensual, and spiritual, are potent forces that demand respect and awareness. In worship, Dionysus's cult was unusual among the Olympians for its ecstatic and sometimes frenzied practices. Processions, music, dancing, and ritual intoxication were integral, allowing participants to transcend ordinary consciousness. Wine, as a sacred substance, symbolized not only pleasure, but also divine communication, the ability to access deeper truths through altered perception and communion with the god. This emphasis on transformation distinguishes Dionysus from other Olympians, marking him as a deity whose power is both liberating and destabilizing. In summary, Dionysus embodies ecstasy, transformation, and the dynamic forces of life and nature. He represents pleasure and fertility, joy and danger, liberation and chaos. Through him, the Greeks explored the power of emotional, spiritual, and sensory experiences, recognizing that life's vitality is inseparable from risk, intensity, and transformation. Dionysus teaches that surrender, celebration, and engagement with the primal forces of existence are essential for understanding both human nature and the divine. Through Dionysus, the ancient Greeks embraced the paradoxical nature of life, that ecstasy and restraint, pleasure and danger, order and chaos coexist, shaping existence and revealing deeper truths. In the pantheon of Olympus, Dionysus is the god who celebrates the fullness of experience, reminding mortals that joy, creativity, and transformation are divine gifts to be approached with reverence, courage, and awareness. In the world of Greek mythology, where gods often vie for glory, power, or attention, Hestia represents quiet stability, the sustaining force of home and community. She is the goddess of the hearth, domestic life, and the sacred flame, a presence both omnipresent and understated, while other Olympians display dramatic interventions in mortal affairs. Hestia's influence is subtle but essential, underpinning the structure of society and the rhythms of daily life. Hestia is the firstborn of Cronus and Rhea, swallowed at birth and later released alongside her siblings. Despite her importance, she is known for her modesty and peace-loving nature. She abstains from quarrels and conflicts among gods, offering a stabilizing presence in the tumultuous world of Olympus. Her role is symbolic, the hearth, a source of warmth, sustenance, and gathering mirrors her nature, steady, protective, and central to family and civic life. Symbols associated with Hestia include the hearth, fire, and flame, which are sacred in both private homes and public spaces. Every household maintained a hearth in her honor, and city-states kept eternal flames to invoke her protection and blessing. Through these practices, Hestia's presence permeated daily life, reminding the Greeks that the divine is woven into routine, communal, and domestic spheres. She embodies continuity, loyalty, and the essential comfort that sustains human civilization. Long before Zeus and the Olympians ruled, the cosmos was governed by the Titans, primordial beings of immense power and elemental force. The Titans, children of Uranus, Sky, and Gaia, Earth, represent natural and cosmic forces, from oceanic expanses to celestial authority, from time itself to the cycles of the earth. They are larger than life figures whose stories set the stage for the Olympian age. The most famous of the Titans include Cronus, who overthrew his father Uranus, Rhea, his sister and consort Oceanus, lord of the vast ocean, Hyperion, associated with the sun, and Mnemosyne, goddess of memory. Their interactions, rivalries, and eventual overthrow by the Olympians in the Titanomachy symbolize the transition from primal forces to organized order. This narrative reflects the Greek understanding of cosmic evolution, raw power and chaos giving way to structure, hierarchy, and divine law. The Titans' legacy is enduring. Even after defeat, their influence persists in nature, time, and memory. They are not merely antagonists to the Olympians. They are essential foundations upon which the structured cosmos is built. Stories of their reign highlight themes of succession, power, and inevitability, illustrating how ancient Greeks conceptualized the origins of the universe and the moral and physical order within it. In Greek thought, inspiration and learning were divine gifts embodied in the Muses, 9 goddesses who preside over the arts, sciences, and memory. Born of Zeus and Mnemosyne, each muse governs a distinct domain: epic poetry, history, music, dance, astronomy, and more. They are the catalysts for creativity, linking the human mind to divine insight. The muses are often invoked in poetry and song to inspire storytelling, research, and artistic expression. For example, Homer begins his Iliad and Odyssey by calling upon a muse to provide divine guidance for his narrative. Symbols associated with the muses include lyres, scrolls, masks, and musical instruments, each reflecting their respective domain. They illustrate the Greeks' belief that art, music, and knowledge are sacred, divinely sanctioned, and essential for culture. The Muses' influence emphasizes that creativity is not only personal, but cosmically significant. They bridge human intellect and divine inspiration, suggesting that learning, memory, and artistry are conduits for understanding the world and one's place within it. Their presence reinforces the ideal that culture, wisdom, and expression are central to both individual and societal flourishing. While Zeus reigns over the sky and Poseidon rules the seas, Hades governs the realm of the dead. Unlike other Olympians, Hades is associated not with chaos or conflict, but with inevitability, order, and the finality of death. The underworld, his domain, is not merely a place of punishment, but a structured, essential part of the cosmos, reflecting the Greek understanding that death is a natural and inescapable stage of life. Hades is the son of Cronus and Rhea, and brother to Zeus and Poseidon. Following the overthrow of the Titans, the three brothers divided the universe. Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon the seas, and Hades the underworld. Though less celebrated in mythology than his brothers, Hades' power is absolute within his domain. He is stern but fair, ensuring that the balance between life and death is maintained. Mortals fear him, but the Greeks did not view him as evil. Rather, he embodies the certainty and impartiality of mortality. Symbols of Hades include the Cerberus, his three-headed guard dog, the helmet of invisibility he often lends to heroes, and the bident, a two-pronged staff. These symbols reflect his dominion over the unseen, the boundary between life and death, and the security of his realm. Temples and cults dedicated to Hades were rare, as fear and respect dominated his worship. Yet his presence was omnipresent in Greek consciousness, reminding mortals of the natural cycle and the necessity of living with reverence for life. And its conclusion, ruler of the oceans, Poseidon is one of the most formidable Olympians. His domain encompasses not only the seas, but also earthquakes, horses, and storms. Poseidon's power is immense, reflecting the unpredictable and often dangerous nature of water, a force essential to Greek life for travel, trade, and sustenance, but capable of destruction and chaos. Poseidon is the son of Cronus and Rhea, and brother to Zeus and Hades. Though he rules the seas, he is not merely destructive. He is also a patron of sailors, fishermen, and coastal cities, offering protection in exchange for respect and offerings. Myths portray him as volatile, often driven by anger or rivalry, yet he can also display generosity, especially toward those who honor him. His trident, a three-pronged spear, symbolizes his dominion over the oceans and his ability to create storms, earthquakes, or calm waters at will. Poseidon's myths illustrate both the utility and danger of his power. He competed with Athena to become the patron deity of Athens, offering a saltwater spring, ultimately losing to Athena's olive tree, symbolizing strategic wisdom over raw force. Sea voyages often invoked Poseidon, as sailors recognized the unpredictability of storms and tides. His connection to horses, thought to mirror the untamed energy of the sea, emphasizes his association with both life-giving and destructive natural forces. At the pinnacle of Olympus stands Zeus, ruler of gods and men, god of the sky, thunder, and law. Zeus embodies authority, justice, and protection, commanding both the cosmos and the Olympian hierarchy. His presence is awe-inspiring, symbolizing both power and the moral order that governs gods and mortals alike. Zeus is the youngest child of Cronus and Rhea. Saved from being swallowed by his father, he overthrew Cronus and freed his siblings, establishing the rule of the Olympians. His thunderbolt, forged by Hephaestus, represents both his destructive potential and his ability to enforce justice. Beyond his might, Zeus's wisdom ensures balance and fairness, intervening in human and divine affairs to maintain order. Zeus's myths reveal his complexity. He is a protector of cities, laws, and hospitality, yet he is also known for romantic pursuits and conflicts with other gods. Symbols such as the eagle, oak tree, and thunderbolt emphasize strength, vision, and authority. His worship was widespread across Greece, with festivals like the Olympia celebrating both athletic prowess and divine order. Zeus represents the culmination of divine power, embodying the principles that ensure balance, justice, and continuity in both human and divine spheres. In Greek mythology, some powers operate beyond the influence of gods themselves. The Fates, or Moirai, are three sisters who control destiny, determining the lifespan, fortune, and ultimate outcomes of mortals and gods alike. They represent the inevitability of fate, the order underlying the cosmos, and the limits of divine and human agency. The Fates consist of Clotho, who spins the thread of life, Lachesis, who measures its length, and Atropos, who cuts it, ending life. Together, they symbolize the complete cycle of existence. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, respects their authority, emphasizing the Greeks' belief that fate is absolute and impartial, guiding both mortals and immortals. Symbols associated with the Fates include threads, spindles, and shears, representing life's fragility and the inevitability of death. Myths involving the Fates often illustrate the interplay between free will and destiny, showing that while choices matter, ultimate outcomes are predetermined. The Fates remind the Greeks that life is structured by forces greater than ambition, desire, or strength, teaching humility, respect, and acceptance of life's rhythms. While the Fates control destiny, the Graces or Charites bring elegance, joy, and delight into the world. Typically three: Aglaia, splendor; Euphrosyne, mirth; and Thalia, good cheer. The Graces symbolize the pleasures of life, social harmony, and the arts. They embody beauty, generosity, and the enjoyment of both human and divine existence. The Graces often accompany Aphrodite, enhancing her influence over love and desire. They also appear in artistic and religious contexts, blessing festivals, dances, and celebrations with grace and charm. Symbols include flowers, garlands, and musical instruments, representing fertility, harmony, and joy. Worship of the Graces highlights the Greek appreciation for beauty and social cohesion, reinforcing the idea that life's pleasures, though fleeting, are essential for balance and cultural flourishing. In stark contrast to the Graces, the Furies, or Erinyes, embody retribution and justice, pursuing those who commit crimes, especially familial transgressions, such as murder or betrayal. They are terrifying, relentless, and morally impartial, representing the Greeks' understanding that wrongdoing, particularly against kin, cannot go unpunished. The Furies are often depicted with serpents in their hair and blood on their hands, reinforcing their fearsome power. Their role in mythology demonstrates that morality is enforced not only by law or kings, but also by divine entities who oversee justice at a cosmic level. They remind mortals that actions have consequences and that the natural and divine order demands accountability. Rituals sometimes invoked the Furies to curse enemies or to seek justice, showing how fear and respect for cosmic law were intertwined in Greek religious life. Beyond the Olympians and primordial forces, the Greeks celebrated heroes and demigods, beings who inhabit the threshold between humans and gods. Figures like Heracles, Perseus, and Achilles exemplify courage, strength, and ingenuity, yet remain deeply human in their flaws, struggles, and mortality. These characters illustrate the Greek belief that extraordinary skill or virtue can bring mortals closer to the divine, while still acknowledging the inevitability of human limitations. Heroes were often children of a god and a mortal, such as Heracles, son of Zeus and Alcmene. They undertake quests, slay monsters, and achieve feats impossible for ordinary humans, embodying ideals of bravery, intelligence, and perseverance. Yet myths emphasize their vulnerability. Heracles struggles with rage, Achilles is bound by pride and fate, and Perseus faces moral and physical dangers. Through these stories, Greeks explored themes of courage, fate, and the tension between mortality and divinity, using heroes as models of human aspiration and divine interaction. Hero cults and temples were widespread. Heroes were honored through sacrifices, games, and festivals, emphasizing their enduring influence in local communities. They bridge divine power and mortal effort, showing that human life, though finite, can intersect meaningfully with the eternal forces of Olympus. In Greek culture, communication with the divine extended beyond temples and worship. Oracles and prophecy were central to understanding the god's will and navigating life's uncertainties. The most famous oracle at Delphi was dedicated to Apollo, the god of prophecy, music, and medicine. Pythia, the priestess of Delphi, would enter trances to deliver cryptic messages, guiding kings, generals, and citizens in decisions of enormous consequence. Oracles exemplify the Greek belief that the gods are intimately involved in human affairs, offering guidance while preserving the mystery of fate. Their messages were often ambiguous, requiring interpretation and wisdom. This ambiguity reflected the understanding that divine insight is not absolute knowledge for mortals, but a tool to be considered carefully. Oracles reinforced the concept that life is shaped by both action and cosmic will, intertwining morality, strategy, and the acceptance of forces beyond human control. Prophecy was not limited to Delphi. Many city-states and sanctuaries had local seers and divinatory practices, from reading entrails to observing natural signs. These practices illustrate a deep cultural engagement with the unknown, emphasizing that knowledge, guidance, and foresight were as essential to survival as courage, strength, or skill. The complex tapestry of Greek mythology, gods, goddesses, heroes, oracles, and spirits, reflects a society striving to understand the natural world, human behavior, and the forces that shape existence. Worship was not only about fear or devotion, it was a framework for interpreting life, morality, and the universe itself. Through rituals, festivals, art, and storytelling, the Greeks explored themes of power, justice, love, death, creativity, and transformation, giving structure to both daily life and cosmic understanding. Greek religion emphasized balance. Ares teaches the danger of unchecked aggression. Athena, the importance of strategy. Dionysus demonstrates ecstasy and release, while Hestia ensures stability and domestic order. Life, in Greek thought, is a balance between chaos and structure, joy and responsibility, action and reflection. Even the fates remind mortals that destiny guides them, shaping existence in ways beyond comprehension. The myths and deities of ancient Greece continue to captivate us today, influencing literature, art, philosophy, and popular culture. They offer insights into the human condition, showing that ambition, love, courage, and curiosity are timeless forces. By studying these stories, we learn not only about ancient societies, but also about ourselves, our fears, desires, creativity, and the pursuit of meaning in a complex and unpredictable world. Greek mythology endures as a lens through which humans can explore morality, identity, and the interplay between fate and free will. It reminds us that life's mysteries are eternal, and the gods, heroes, and forces of myth continue to teach lessons about resilience, wisdom, and the beauty of existence itself. Now, with a smile on your face, you will have a good understanding of the ancient Greek gods and a good night's sleep. Goodbye, dear friend. See you next time.